Hi guys, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Cool.
We haven't started yet. We're still waiting for Lee and Peter, so.
I like how you have to press a button every time you want to talk, even though you're in person.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't take those or else you'll get in trouble. Yeah. So for our work sessions, we meet at these tables like this. And then for our regular sessions, we sit up on the dais. But we're like kind of like
All righty.
We'll go ahead and call to order the Wednesday, June 8th, 2022 Monroe County Environmental Commission meeting. And first on the agenda is public comment. Is there anybody on Zoom or in the building that would like to make a public comment? Seeing none. I had approval of minutes on the agenda, Peter. I don't know if I didn't get any from you from our last meeting yet, so I don't know if we'll be able to do that.
I would like to publicly acknowledge my failure
Sorry, I should have reached out to
in
you.
sending those
Reminded
minutes. I will do better.
All right. Appreciate it. Next time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let me set an alarm. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'll remind you. All right, our main item on the agenda tonight is to work on developing a work plan for the rest of 2022. We've had a few meetings this year. We've been kind of spotty, so we'd like to try to set something up more formal that we can put on the agenda and on our radar to start working on. And I know I looked in our Dropbox account, we had some ideas from a while back, a few years ago, that we threw out there. I can share that with you. I didn't do that before the meeting. I apologize. But before we do that, we can go ahead and just kind of open it up if there's any thoughts or comments on this from anybody before we jump into what we had on previous meetings.
I have never heard of this Dropbox account. So if there is like historical information to look at, I would be interested in seeing that.
Sure, I'll do that right now. Your Indiana's account, which account do you have a Gmail account, right?
You're muted.
Wait, are you asking me or?
Ari Buyer at indiana.edu.
Is that okay? I can do that now. So yeah, I just shared that with you. I thought there was a more recent one. The one I'm looking at is from August 2019. And there's some things on here that I think we've mentioned. So one thing we mentioned in the past was trying to develop a work plan based on input from the, the residents of Monroe County. We never really pursued that too far. And one of the issues was talking about how we would go about getting people to take a survey, what methods we have to reach out to people. And I know the commissioners and the council might have some methods they already use. Do you have anything already where you kind of send out a blast to the correspondence?
Do you want to talk about how wildly successful your listening sessions are? Because mine are the same.
preferably
Yeah.
Not asking them to come in person, but some method, whether it be
It,
traditional mail or email
Well-
or Facebook or social media or however that works.
what
there's
we
anything.
have done is put a survey on the website and maybe on the on Facebook.
Okay.
But we've never attempted to mail one or do anything like that. And I don't know, it's very, very difficult to get people to involve themselves in
Right.
these things.
Is it possible for county commissions to use the commissioner's website as a platform since there's already at least some engagement there? Because we don't currently have a website
That
or
might,
an active social media profile.
that could be possible, but we're just about to put up a survey about how the public would use the ARPA money.
Okay.
And that probably we wouldn't want to run both at once.
And actually, that's probably a pretty good question is like, who is the intended target for this survey? Is it going to be all 150,000 residents or 100,000, excuse me, residents of Monroe County? Or is it going to be a subset thereof? Or what are you thinking?
I mean, ideally, it would be everybody, but anybody that cares enough to respond to the Environmental Commission. I wouldn't want to just close it off to a certain kind of preordained subset. I'd like to get feedback from anybody and everybody that's willing. But again, I don't know what the best means are to do that.
Well, I kind of
And maybe we're jumping ahead of ourselves since we
Think-
don't have a survey yet. Or exactly, but
Well, I'm just wondering if we wouldn't be better off pursuing a particular area of projects or something. So basically, the two are connected, but there's the report we got from the Resiliency Institute,
Mhm.
and there's a lot we could do with that. And then it would be nice to have a climate change readiness plan, which it would make sense for the Environmental Commission to work on.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to dictate what we do. Those are just my suggestions.
Right. do you have an idea of what climate change readiness might mean as a commission, what we could do?
Well, that's a lot of what the resiliency report was about, but hasn't the city done one or is working on one? Yeah, so we could look at that.
Did you do that through ERI or did you do that on your own?
Through ER.
Yeah,
Well, the Hoosier readiness assessment we did, the same one that you completed, yeah.
and I remember there was a bit of a fee. I can't remember all the details. Do you, Peter?
Actually, about using ERI? About using ERI or who do we pay the
Well,
fee to?
The,
Or which fee?
for, to, gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think to get certification, they have programs or some. You probably know, Lauren, I don't.
You may have like paid a fee to participate in the cohort,
A cohort.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what,
to
yeah,
just help support the cost of it, yeah.
that's what I was trying. And we do have some money that we could use to pay that fee
Hmm.
and kind of start. And if we started working with them, at least it's a kind of formulated plan.
So yeah, this might be changing too much the topic, but on that note, I know we had talked in meetings past about working with a cohort. And I think you had been the last in contact with them. And we'd also obviously been talking about the,
If I had done the minutes, you could look at those and
Right.
see that ERI will have another cohort at the end of this year. And so September, October, they're going to have more information about fees, students that could be available to do the work, and who else would be in the cohort, you know, what we could be doing, what that cohort's going to be focused on, that sort of thing. So I think at this point, like, we know that the fall is going to be spent having conversations about whether we think that that's a good idea for the county to engage in a cohort. And then in the, if we agree that it is a good idea, then it will probably start, you know, in the next step, early next year. But the data is not available right now to know like how much it's going to cost or any of that. Sort of.
I had a couple of thoughts about items for the remainder of the year. One was, I know the assessment's complete from the county, but the commission could play a role in communicating the next steps report and education, and maybe the outreach survey could be related to items in that next steps report to the public to say, you know, which of these priorities do you think is the most important for the county to address? So instead of starting from scratch and saying, you know, what should the county environmental commission be working on, can communicate what work has already been done so that that report's being utilized and communicated. And then the other item was that the Climate Leadership Summit that Earth Charter hosts every year is in Richmond, and there's a breakout session for sustainability commissions. I will be attending in my work capacity, but it might be good, Nolan, if you would want to attend or anyone else, to register for that and get more connected with what other sustainability commissions across the state are doing, just as one way to engage more broadly. So I'd like to maybe propose those two items as part of what we try to accomplish for the rest of the year.
when is the summit?
September, maybe, I'll look it up.
Is that the same summit that we went to a few years ago?
Yeah, so in previous years, it's been in Goshen. It was all remote. 2020, 2021, it was hybrid, and it will have both virtual and in-person attendance. So if someone wanted to register just for the online session they're trying to encourage broad participation. So it's about a 2-hour drive from here. So depending on what you have going on that day, I will look up when it is. I've found it to be helpful to get a broader perspective of what's happening around the state. ERI will be there. And it's I think it's free to register, but I'll check.
Yeah, September 8th and 9th.
And what's the name of the summit?
Climate Leadership Summit, it's hosted by Earth Charter Indiana.
Okay.
It's an annual statewide conference for mayors, city and town leaders, community partners. And in particular, there will be a session scrolling down in regards to Sustainability Commission. So the roundtable for that is 1:30 to 3:30. Learn about the role of sustainability commissions. It's facilitated in part by West Lafayette commissioners and commissioners from the Richmond Environmental Sustainability Commission. Members of existing sustainability commissions, community members, and municipal employees are all encouraged to attend. So I'm going to encourage our B Coast members to have someone come as well from there.
I'm on the website. I don't see a cost.
I don't think that there is one actually, because they have sponsorships.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that was announced pretty recently, and I think if anyone's able to attend, it's pretty valuable.
Going back to the next steps with the ERI, I know we talked about what those were at some point. I don't have the specific steps on the top of my head. I was trying to look for it. I know some of them were flood control type issues. Do you remember what the specific ones, like issues that might pertain to the commission?
Yeah, there were a couple of them. I know we had talked about the potential tree canopy ordinance. I think also just in the next couple of weeks, I'll be meeting to compare the city and county results. And so I think partnering on communicating what the report tells us about extreme heat days, flooding at a more basic level is important. And then also maybe getting feedback from either a survey or just evaluating that section and the next steps further to figure out if there's possibilities for joint communication and prioritization of some of those recommendations. They were pretty broad. I mean, there were a couple of grant opportunities that were identified, but I think since many people don't know that either the city or county underwent that process of evaluating, that's also just one important outcome for the remainder of the year, is explaining what that was assessing, what it told us about how prepared the city and the county are for climate change and where there's areas potentially for improvement, and then get more feedback about what the environmental commission role could be in helping move that forward.
Who is the city meeting with the county on that? Do you know?
What's up?
You said the city and the county are going to meet to talk to compare that.
Right now, there's some gaps in our response because like, if you're a city or a county and you're answering the questionnaire, there's different responsibilities that city and county have. So I'm just looking to see in some areas like public health or other comparing responses to see what we said and Monroe County, and looking at some questions that we didn't answer, kind of trying to fill in some gaps. And then maybe there's a possibility to have some sort of joint communication about both completing it, because there wasn't a lot of visibility. It got finished during the pandemic.
And there's been, our emergency management department played a large role in some of those areas. And there's been pretty significant turnover recently in that department. And so it would be helpful, I think, for us to have this conversation.
So I think once there will be some probably upcoming meetings. I was just talking to some folks at ERI this morning about trying to sit down and revisit that, because we completed it and then nothing really happened with it necessarily. And I'd like to make sure that it's useful as a public education tool.
Mhm. Yeah, so it looks like the main prioritized actions in the plan were focused around social and financial burden. Extreme heat, like you said, and then extreme precipitation and river flooding. So go ahead.
Sorry, flooding or stormwater control or whatever is all, we have projects for that on the ARPA list. So there's some money available if people can weigh in and
Yeah, who does kind of advise where that money is being spent now, if it is being spent?
well, it's a little complicated. It's kind of between the council and the commissioners. And basically, once a month at the council's work session, we're going to have a discussion updating where we're at with various projects and if things have been accomplished or not. And
Essentially, the commissioners come up with a plan and then we allocate the funds. We already have half of the ARPA funds here. And so we've been investing in certain areas and there's others that will continue. And that's my county council or my council report tonight is an update on what we're doing with some of those ARPA dollars.
So I guess specifically on the flooding issue you mentioned, where does the commissioners, how do you develop a plan? Are you getting outside feedback on what projects would be the most beneficial?
well, the one that I'm involved in and that I think at this time is maybe most important is identifying failing retention ponds and figuring out what's needed with them. And then possibly creating grants for neighborhoods to work on those projects or whatever.
Okay.
And it could be very useful if the Environmental Commission could kind of administer the grants.
Okay,
Assuming we haven't actually decided on grants, but should we decide that, then
and the county stormwater department is the
Yeah.
one who kind of identifies those locations.
they're actually doing a survey of retention ponds right now. I'm going to be talking to Kelsey next week and finding out where that's at and getting more information about how we can be moving things forward. And
And the grant money would go to private property retention ponds?
well, most retention ponds are put in as a part of a major development project.
Mhm.
And usually it ends up being the responsibility of neighborhood associations to take care of the retention ponds, but that can be very expensive, so they don't always do it.
Mhm.
And I mean, it can become a serious problem for some people.
Right.
And especially since we're getting worse floods, the retention ponds aren't even built to control the kind of flooding that we get sometimes now.
Yeah, I know when Kelsey was at the city, she sort of started our green infrastructure grant program, but that was mostly like individual households
Yeah,
and not housing associations and things like that. So that might be a bigger project for her to deal with in-house. Is that what you're thinking? And we could help in that organize?
yeah, I mean, well, basically, we have teams working on all the ARPA projects, but the team working on the retention ponds is me.
Okay.
And I have yet to really do much looking into it. I mean, I've discussed it briefly with Kelsey and she's doing the survey. And I think once that's completed, we'll have a much better idea of what we're actually looking at. So I'll check with her next week and
Okay, yeah, if you want to
See
loop me in
what-
and if she has ideas how we could
yeah,
assist in something like that, we could see that as possibly something we could focus on.
yeah. Because I mean, if we do grants, then we need to have a group who looks over the applications and decides who does and doesn't get them and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of that. So that-
Process. But yeah, if they have the boots on the ground, then it could help maybe review that possibly.
For the purposes of minutes, can I recap what we've talked about already?
Go for it.
Okay, so we've talked about doing a community-wide survey. We've talked about revisiting the resilience plan so that we can explain it to city and county because it was completed during the pandemic. We've talked about getting public input on the resilience plan and the survey. And then we've also talked about encouraging current members of this body to attend the Climate Leadership Summit in Goshen on September 8th and 9th.
In
It's in
Richmond.
Richmond this year.
Richmond, got it. I even have the website pulled up. So those are 3 or 4 really good ideas.
And yeah, like somebody said, I mean, it would be good if we did a survey to have it. You know, I think the original idea was to make sure we're focusing on what the county residents want us to focus on. But if we want to focus like particularly on the Hoosier Resilience Index, that could also be a good idea. I mean, that's pretty focused with the main bullet points there. So that might, I mean, if those are the priority issues for us dealing with climate issues, then we might just want to start with that if we can.
I think also if at some point the county is interested in having a climate or sustainability plan, focusing on existing work, looking at what's already being done, lays the framework for that happening down the road better than us creating an entirely separate survey. Because you could always have open response, but people respond better responding against something specific. You know, like this was identified as a issue in Monroe County. How much do you agree that this needs to be addressed?
I don't know if this is helpful at all because I've been out of the loop for a while, but to me, it seems kind of unclear what is supposed to be the mission and purpose of this group, and can that be used to identify what we're focused on for the rest of the year? Because, you know, environmental work is huge, and most everybody here is busy or volunteering, and focusing in is going to be really important to accomplishing anything. And I'm also curious what historically has guided this group in identifying what projects have been executed or how to prioritize things. Does anybody have that information?
I think historically, and Peter might be able to speak better since he was a president in the past, but it was, I mean, I will let Peter speak because I'm just going to speculate, but I can read the sort of mission statement of the commission, which may be kind of vague, but the commission shall serve an advisory role and focus on educating the community and engaging residences and businesses in supporting initiatives which will help ensure a healthier and more economically viable future for the county. So that's the broad overarching.
I read that before the meeting, and it's quite broad.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, let's fix all the environmental issues and throw in the economic issues too.
When the commission was first formed, it had to do with a grant the county had got from Honeywell to lower our energy use pretty significantly. And the Environmental Commission was very involved in that. And then basically we met our goals. And there hasn't been, I don't think we've really refocused again since then.
Mhm.
We've talked about several possibilities, but
And is anybody still tracking that? Because that was a guaranteed energy savings contract, right? So there's, I mean, Honeywell must be doing something and somebody at the county must be doing
I don't
something.
think Honeywell is anymore, but Dina is entering all of the utility bills and everything in a spreadsheet to track it.
And Rachel, I'll speak to when I was president of this body, the commission did that work that Dina's doing now in the commissioner's office. So we would go through the energy bills for the county and we would manually enter them into a database. And then then the database would calculate the savings, the energy savings realized. And then the money went into an energy conservation fund. And that's pretty much what we did. And if you go back and listen to old CATS meetings, we would spend almost the entire time arguing about annualized data. Like, how do you like make sure that like, you know, the energy used on the electricity on the bulbs or the gas in the heating or whatever, how did that account for weather and temperature and things like that? Really interesting conversations back in the day. But now we have staff doing that work. And I'll also note that, you know, ERI wasn't around, what was it, 5 years ago?
The commission, I think, started more like 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So, but the field is changing, it's evolving. We're getting more, you know, less on, you know, it's just changing. So that's why there's this constant like, well, what do we do? Is there, we're getting a better understanding what resilience is. We're getting a better understanding of what sustainability is, that sort of thing.
That's helpful. Thank you, guys. You mentioned that the savings from this energy tracking was being put in some account. What was that money used for?
That money is available to the Environmental Commission. And very little of it has been used so far. Peter
How much
might,
money is it?
I was going to share that in an upcoming section of the report, but I will share that with you now. I've asked Nolan to include this in future agendas, which I'll include it in the minutes, so that's easy to do. The Energy Conservation Fund is a non-reverting fund. It is Fund 4919. So you can, for all intents and purposes, you could call up the commissioner's office and say, hey, what's in Fund 4919? How much money's in it? As of June 7th, yesterday, there was $48,000 in it.
Are you
So
kidding me?
we have, as Commissioner Jones was stating, that money is there for us to recommend to the commissioners to have a plan to do something, and then it'll be allocated by the council. Or I don't know. I think that fund sits in the commissioners.
no, the council has to allocate it.
Okay.
Or
So
at least that was the last I
yeah, we'll look
heard.
into it. Anyway, so that is available, and my intent is to bring a fund balance every single month. Because as Commissioner Jones stated, there are inputs coming into that account. Inflows
Yeah.
coming into that account, so.
Well, yeah, you could really do something with that much money.
I think maybe where some of the hesitation in using it has come from is that at least some people believe that it should be used particularly for the county. So for example, the one project that I know that we have partially funded along with, oh, I can't remember who else is funding it, was we changed all of the lights in the canopy of lights to LED lights, which made a huge difference. So, you know, those are the kinds of things that some people feel it should be used for rather than kind of spreading it out more generally. But I don't think that's set in stone or anything. I think if we want to explore other possibilities, we should.
And we do have a new facilities, relatively new facilities
Yes.
manager.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I've
we
not-
might actually want to invite him to a meeting and.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I've not talked to him. He
It-
might have come
yeah.
up with some ideas by now, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Of what
he's
should-
very good. He seems to have learned everything immediately.
This may be a terrible thing, but since we're brainstorming, you know, things to do, something that Lee said about accepting community applications for the retention pond grants as a potential possibility. Do you guys think, since there is this fund, could we offer a grant to different organizations in the community who are working on environmental issues? And this body could accept applications once a year and review proposals and select ones to offer funding. Would that work within the structure of this organization?
I think it could be considered, certainly. Basically, this commission recommends things to the commissioners.
Mhm.
And I can't speak for all three commissioners, so I can't say for sure whether there would be general agreement that that would be a good thing to do. As I said, there's been some feeling in the past that it should kind of be spent on the county, but there's nothing that says that has to be. So I don't see any reason why we shouldn't try to broaden that.
When you say on the county, you mean specifically on county properties and facilities?
Yeah, things that will make the county more energy resilient, county government more
County
energy
assets.
resilient.
Yeah.
I will also mention, Rachel, that our stormwater department publishes an annual report. And should we want to suggest to the commissioners that we invest in stormwater, it would be a really good idea to have Kelsey come in and take us through her annual report, because she spends all day, every day thinking about this sort of thing. And, you know, I'm not an expert in it.
Well, in spite of being on the stormwater board, I'm not an expert, but I learned a little bit. And yeah, I think having Kelsey come in would be a really good idea. She's very knowledgeable, and we're really having to update a whole lot of stormwater things right now. The state has kind of tightened their standards a whole lot.
Do you know what time they put that report out?
I'm attaching the latest report to you, as well as the ARPA project teams list, and then you can send it out to the body.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We could also, stormwater and is one area of the ERI action list, but there are other areas we could say these are the focus areas that we're looking for proposals from the community. And it could be neighborhoods, it could be nonprofits, small businesses that have ideas of ways that they could, implement a project to address these concerns. This is just, one possibility. And then you're giving the community sort of the opportunity to engage within the framework of what's been identified as priority issues.
I think, Peter, if you could just do a fund report to see what the inflow is, because even if the balance right now is 48,000, if it's not regenerating, it may not be feasible to have a long-term plan for that funding.
Sure. And I think at this time, can I give a report on what we're doing with solar panels
Sure.
with ARPA? Because it pertains to this conversation, because right now the energy savings have generated $48,000. But with ARPA, we are having and this comes from Commissioner Julie Thomas. So thanks to her for her work on this. She's really done a lion's share of this, and I'll send these notes out and also include them in the minutes. But we are working with MPI to give us a quote and estimates, and determining whether if ARPA funds or other funds are allocated by the county council, we will proceed with all or some of the following. We are looking to move our fleet, which is all vehicles in the county. Think like cars that probation uses or health uses, all the way to what our highway department uses, to electric and electric gas mix fleet vehicles. Now, those are hard to come by right now for a variety of geopolitical reasons, but the plan for the future is that for our health building, we will add solar to the porch roof following the remodel and reconstruction. The plan is also to add 4 or more charging stations, that's electric vehicle charging stations, in the parking lot. For the county parking
In the
garage,
showers parking lot, right?
yeah, I'm getting to that, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
there's a long list, so
Sorry.
buckle up. In the parking garage, the county parking garage, which has the living wall right there on Morton, we'll add a parking canopy with solar to the north and south sides of the top floor. Add up to 12 or more charging stations where it is least expensive to do so because we need a conduit to reach other floors. We'll add solar to stairwell roofs, especially on the southeast and northwest corners. So that's for the parking garage. For the Youth Services Bureau, MPI is going to investigate roof and possible ground-based solar. The Youth Services Bureau building is it's out on the kind of southwest side of town. And if we do put roof or ground solar, we'll definitely need battery backup at that location. For the showers building, we'll do battery backup beyond 3 hours, especially it's needed to ensure fire suppression. The fire suppression mechanism can function in the archive. And in the showers parking lot, there's a scheduled reconstruction for 2023. Solar will be installed at that point. We'll also add 4 canopy arrays in the parking lot and install parking lot lights on DC battery power. The next area is the Johnson Hardware Building. Is this okay? Am I going too slow? All right. The Johnson Hardware Building, we're going to install 1 row of parking canopy solar array on the north side of the lot. We'll add a roof array and we'll add battery storage. For the highway garage area, we'll add solar arrays on the roofs for emergency management, the storage building, and the brine building. We'll also add battery backup at the brine building. We'll build canopy arrays in passenger vehicle parking lots nearest the entrance. And that means an addition of 4 electric vehicle charging stations. We'll also build tall canopy arrays for dump trucks with charging stations for our highway department. We'll also need a new generator at the highway garage building. MPI is going to be contacting Duke regarding net metering if we can pull those, before the end of the year, those permits are pulled. So those are the scheduled list of things that we'll use ARPA dollars to invest in if we've determined that ARPA can be used for some of those things. Treasury has provided guidance and we'll be consulting our legal team to make sure that we can do that. And then this has to be appropriated by, passed by the commissioners and then dollars appropriated by the council. What I want to say about all of these, and this gets to Rachel, what you were just talking about, is if we add all these solar arrays, that means that the amount of money that's coming into this energy conservation fund is going to grow significantly. It would be, in my estimation, and of course I don't get to, tell everyone what to do. It would be really wise to come up with plans on how to spend that money before we have the wonderful problem of having too much money and we don't know what to do with it.
So all that's being done through an energy conservation, guaranteed energy conservation contract? Is that how the funds come in, or is it not necessarily
The funds
case?
come in where we measure, it's a pre-post.
Okay,
So we measure how much energy we're spending at the beginning of the year. I don't know how Dina's doing it. I don't know if she's doing calendar year, fiscal year, but there's a pre-period where that's our benchmark.
okay.
And then there's a post period where we measure against that benchmark. And whatever energy savings is then monetized based on, whatever rate is available based on the energy type. Then that monetization then is then allocated into the fund. That is my understanding. Do I have that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. So
Are there projections of what the savings will be if all of that is approved?
that is a heck of a question. I don't think so. I think at this point, Commissioner Thomas has gone around with MPI and said, I want to dream. This is a once in a generation investment of ARPA dollars. Let's be transformational. And this is what I just read out loud was the dream list. And so, you know, maybe some of these are not going to happen. Maybe the price tag on this is going to be way too high because there's, you know, like 30 ARPA like projects that we're working on.
Yeah.
So time will tell.
I think it's also has something to, well, Duke and the net metering is going to have a lot to do with how this works out.
But if you don't have an interconnection agreement by the end of June, then it's kind of a moot point.
It's a moot point, yeah.
But I would say that if she's getting proposals from MPI, that should be included in terms of expected generation.
Yeah.
So,
And if battery backup is playing a part of that, it might not affect the net metering as much, depending on the battery size.
Yeah, to Rachel's question, there's a lot that's going to go into this, and there's going to be yeah. I mean, just the amount of solar panels we have on, you know, the buildings right now is generating $48,000. I mean, I don't know. I need to look at the report. I don't know if I mean, that's certainly not annual, right? But you know, it's going to grow.
do you have that in a list that you'd be willing to share? Or you just read out loud?
Yeah, so I will send that list out to you and then you can
Okay.
share it with everybody else. And then we can also include it in the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, since you mentioned moving the fleet to electric, are those charging stations you mentioned, are they for the public or are they all strictly for city vehicles?
Let me look through the list again. If you have a thought,
I think, well, at least the ones at the highway garage
Right.
are all for the county.
Or county, sorry.
so there will
Yeah.
be charging stations in the health buildings parking lot, but I think that's behind the arm. So you
It
need,
is, and that's really, that's the commissioner's parking lot.
there will be 12 charging stations in the parking garage, but you need a county badge to get into the county parking garage.
Yeah, I was just curious because obviously that's if we're gonna move to electric, specifically
Yeah.
electric only vehicles and the charging infrastructure is gonna be a huge,
Yeah.
huge
Yeah,
part
I
of
think
that.
Johnson Hardware, the parking is only for probation and
Mhm.
election.
And then in the highway garage, Commissioner Thomas made it clear that the 4 charging stations will be in the passenger vehicle lot.
Mhm.
So you know, obviously, our huge dump trucks probably aren't going to be plugged in anytime soon.
Right.
But the passenger vehicles are going to, you know, that technology is here.
Great. So just also out of curiosity, since it might be something the commission could do in the future, how is this list? It was, you said Commissioner Thomas and MPI that mostly just came up with a theoretical list of things that we could do.
My understanding is that Commissioner Thomas walked around with our building, director. And so again, it would be a really good idea to have him.
It would. We actually signed a contract with MPI to survey all county property for solar
Okay.
opportunities.
And that was, the way we paid for that is that was in a GO bond that we voted through last year.
Great.
Which is a municipal bond, a general obligation municipal bond. That was part of it.
Yeah, so it sounds like, and what's his name, the building facility?
Greg Crone.
Greg. So yeah, it sounds like Greg and Kelsey are both priorities to get here the next 2 meetings. So
Yeah.
I'll reach out to both of them.
Hearing about this also makes me think another possible goal for this group could just be figuring out what, you know, the focus and goal overall should be for the next couple of years or the next year, depending on if these changes get approved. Because if there is going to be potentially this fund created or enhanced, having more direction for this body could be really valuable beyond just the next 6 months, you know, longer term.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, having a somewhat concrete plan would be helpful, just based on the past few months. Focus our
Could-
effort.
Could some of the money potentially be used to help like to get a facilitator that could help, I don't know, with that process? Or maybe somebody already in the group would feel comfortable with helping to make that happen.
Rachel, I think your role here is to advise the commissioners. And so my understanding of all this body is that you've got a commissioner sitting right here. You tell her what you say $48,000 is what I think you should do with it. No,
Mhm.
Well, I think that the group has to vote on anything and we have to at least have a quorum that agrees on anything we recommend.
I think a good interim step, if we have $48,000, would be to recommend participation in the resilience cohort and paying for the fee for participating from that. I don't think it's more than $2,000. So that will help create some of the planning infrastructure that will inform how that might be better utilized over time, but without, without participating in that, it might be difficult to keep pace with what other communities are doing.
I agree. And, looking at the cohorts through ERI, it's clear that most of the municipalities are cities. And I think there's a real opportunity, not only for us not to get left behind, but for us to step out in front and say counties can play a role too. It's not just cities.
ERI has also been working on a lot more regional planning
That's right.
too. So I think that's an opportunity as well to better join together efforts that's happening in other areas of the state. I mean, I know especially in Lafayette, they're working on a more regional basis with their climate action planning. So
And the same in Lake and Lake counties up there. I think there's 2 or 3 counties that came together in a cohort. So there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration.
Do you know if the city is planning on doing a cohort again this fall with the ERI?
it kind of depends. The last one was on a urban canopy assessment and I had already completed
Yeah.
that. This year I have someone working with me to do electric vehicle work this summer because it's an area that we need more development and deciding where publicly available charging stations should be. But depending on the topic, we've participated in various forums. I will continue to engage regardless with various aspects of ERI, but I'm not sure about the cohorts.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that it's mostly municipalities because there were certain parts of the survey that the county filled out that were only county departments. The city doesn't have equivalent departments. And so those might be good areas for us to look at and see how.
Yeah, I mean, there were entire sections that we couldn't complete because it didn't make any sense. So that was also feedback about it would be really difficult for a city to complete that without having coordination with their county, regardless of where you are in Indiana.
Yeah.
And part of those next steps, so we mentioned the environmental response, the county's environmental response department, is that a thing? Or is it just the health department?
It's the health department and emergency management are the 2 departments that I remember that are county only.
Mhm.
A lot of other departments, planning and highway and all would have a lot to do with it, stormwater.
Yeah.
But those 2, the county doesn't really have, or the city doesn't have equivalent
Right.
departments.
And yeah, it might be good for us as a commission to open up communications with that emergency response. I know it was a topic of discussion after the flooding last year, I guess it was now. As far as what resources they need and if there's anything we could provide or assist in.
Yeah, the sections that we either could not answer or partially answered were about bridges and flooding, emergency management and critical facilities, some things about planning and land use that had more to do with flooding, and then public health, that intersection. So those are definitely areas to look back at. And so I think between now and the end of the summer, that's my action item, is to revisit that assessment and look at both side by side and see if there's possibilities for collaboration and communication. I'd like to be able to have at least the city one in a public facing website on the sustainability page, contextualized to talk about what it is and why it's important, because we spend a lot of time completing it. And I think it's a helpful way for the public to understand where we're at compared to other communities in the state.
All right, we came up with fair amount of stuff, more than I realized we would. So I think next steps for me is I can invite, like I said, both Kelsey and Greg to a meeting, and we can communicate beforehand and make sure we have points of discussion ready. So I'll do that. And then, and yeah, I'll forward the list of the ARPA money projects out when I get that. Is there any other thoughts on this topic before we move on? All right.
It seems to me like we should, as a next step, we should also do something at our next meeting to talk about have a more structured maybe conversation on how to invest $48,000.
Right.
That seems like a good summertime thing to do.
Yeah. So the retention ponds that you're talking about, there's identifying them now, but do they have funds that they were planning on using for that, or matching funds or anything?
Well, the stormwater department does not have funds to rehabilitate.
Right,
the
or
re-
even grant money type stuff.
So what we were looking at was grant money from ARPA.
Oh, okay.
So,
And that's one of the 30 projects.
pardon?
That's one of the 30 projects on your ARPA list?
It is, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Which you have in your email.
Great, thanks.
Did you have a report?
Yeah, next
Okay.
agenda item
Yeah,
is
okay.
report from council.
So I
There's
wanted
more.
to say that I will bring fund updates from Fund 4919 to every meeting now. That way we know. And if this body wants, I can bring more detailed reports than just me saying in Fund 4919, there is X number of dollars. I can bring a report showing, inflows and outflows. I don't think there's any outflows. So
Yeah, I think it would help. Somebody mentioned earlier, just get an idea of what it is on an annual basis,
mhm.
not just the current number.
And then I wanted to also share ARPA, what we're doing with ARPA and the focus on solar, and how there's this long list. And it seems like, Commissioner Thomas has been doing a lot of work. We're going to be building the building department in and talking with them about, areas where we can, do this work. So those are the two things I wanted to talk about during my council report. And again, a reminder to the public, we go through this ARPA list with the commissioners at every single county council working session. So if you have questions about how we're investing these ARPA dollars, please attend or watch county council work sessions.
What days are those?
That is the second or the fourth
yeah.
Tuesday of every single month. And you can find Zoom login information at co.monroe.in.us on the calendar on the homepage. Just find the date you're looking for. You can also just simply search your favorite search engine for Monroe County, Indiana government, and that website will come up too.
Thank you.
we need to update our website because if we're going to be focusing on the resilience report, that resilience report is not, I don't think, anywhere on our website.
Oh.
On
we
the
asked-
council website or the,
On this
Commission.
body's website, and I can't find it on the county's bigger website. And we still have a link to, my old blog, which I think we should take off.
I will try to bring that up in the next administrative meeting with the commissioners. There are several things on the website that need to be seriously updated.
Yes, we are having a conversation our next council meeting about our website,
Yeah, okay.
which is, it just, things change and it's hard to keep on top of these and it's no one's fault. It's just.
It-
We're,
Too much happens.
there's just too much happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
so I've never seen the Environmental Commission's website have anything on it besides the current members and the purpose. Do other commissions use that website to have more of a current issues, current projects?
So I think it's an important thing to have a landing page when we're recruiting new members. So it's something people can look at. But other groups, other commissions have Facebook pages, but those tend to be like the groups that are doing like monthly speaking series, or like they have big like events to raise awareness about an issue that they're talking about.
Okay.
Speaking as somebody who, has joined fairly recently, having a little historical summary, like what Lee shared today, would be really helpful, I think, for new people. I did try at some point to look back at minutes, but a lot of the minutes are really short or they're missing. And so it's hard to piece things together from the past. And minutes also would be helpful. I know it's a hard thing to do. But at least a history, like a broad overview of what's been done in the past and how the group came to be and that kind of thing.
I think probably between Lee and me, Commissioner Jones and me, we can come up with a good historical summary.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that not what your blog is for?
Okay, so ERI what didn't exist. Like there were like 100 different environmental groups at the time and no one was talking. Like no one knew what anybody else was doing. So I just.
I do think it would be helpful as part of planning out the rest of the year to try to look ahead and organize who we'd like to speak over time, so we can get ahead of that and ask them. I mean, there's a lot of different county environmental organizations that we haven't heard from since before COVID. So kind of getting our bearings about what they're doing lately, I think also serves a public benefit as well. I mean, like, I remember maybe it was like 2019, but like Soil and Water Conservation District presented, like other, would be great to have someone to come by from like Mineral Water Fund or, the watershed report that,
Friends of Lake Monroe.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think having a section of the meeting at least have a general topic, and then we can devote the rest of it to current topics would be helpful.
I think if we're going to invite people to be speaking to us, we should ask them to focus on environmental issues, which I think hasn't. I think people who have spoken to us in the past haven't necessarily focused really narrowly on that.
Okay.
And, and to understand the role of this body, right? We are not a PR firm.
Yeah.
So like we will do as best we can to advertise events, but there's, 5 of us, So like our job is to recommend things to the commissioners like Rachel brought up. And as you brought up, to vote unanimously or vote as a body to recommend those things.
All right, so next on the agenda is old business. I'll bring it up just because I think I do all the time. Any updates on sustainability director type positions?
I think that's gonna come with the work. The answer is no. Again, that's something that we're gonna have to have the commissioners vote on, and then the council will have to appropriate it.
Right.
But in conversations with people, I think we need to kind of do some more work and get it to the point where like the 5 of us are like, we can't do this, you know, once a month. We got, and we can't put more on Dina in the commissioner's office.
Right.
We've
Yeah, I
got to
know we
have
kinda
someone else
mentioned
to do the work.
Relying on the
So-
ERI cohort first and then maybe towards that. but-
That's kind of what I'm thinking, but again, I don't get to make these decisions. What does everyone else think? I mean, I would love to have a staff member to be working on this full time. But
I agree with that, but I think the commissioner's body as a whole feels that there are a lot of new staff needs, and this one doesn't necessarily rise to the top.
yes, I agree. And the other thing is that the council who approves new positions, we have a moratorium on new positions until after budget cycle, which is October. So even if we were able to wave a magic wand and say, we're going to hire somebody in this terrible labor market tomorrow, it would still be in, you know, November, December until we could get that going. So it's going to be a while, but you should keep pestering about it.
Thanks.
Can I ask, what are the other new hiring priorities that Lee mentioned?
The other, I'm sorry, I didn't,
New hire priorities.
oh, well, for one thing, we've hired someone to work on contract for a year with the Community Justice Reform Committee. And that may be a position that we look at making actually a part of the county rather than just a contract position. Also, the commissioners feel a strong need for someone who it's not very well defined, which is why we aren't getting much of anywhere so far. We basically need help with public relations, but we also need help finding and tracking data that the public is interested in. And that's a position that we've been talking about for a while, and
That's just like a general open data warehouse for,
pardon?
that's just like an open data warehouse type thing for the public?
I don't think it's exactly that. It would be a difficult position because the truth is most departments control their own data. And this would be someone kind of coming in and trying to tell the departments how to manage it and everything, which might not be extremely popular. I think more work needs to be done on defining exactly what this position would be, but there's a pretty strong feeling that it's really needed. And in particular, I mean, the public relations part of it, the things the county accomplishes are practically unknown. And, you know, a bigger effort needs to be made to get people realizing that the county actually is working for them.
We had a PAC meeting yesterday, which is a personnel advisory committee. And we reviewed the moratorium on new positions, and only one department had requested a new position recently. So there really is kind of there's not a lot of demand for new positions in the county. And I think a lot of that from our department heads is born out of the tight labor market. People are really struggling to find replacements for staff that have moved on or otherwise no longer work with the county. It's just really hard to find people right now.
It's also rather new to have enough money in the budget to be able to really consider new positions.
That is,
Um,
yes.
For a long, long time, there was pretty much a moratorium on new positions. After 2008, I think.
And that's what makes this position tricky is that with staff, there's costs every single year and they're substantial. So, how do we make sure that the funds are we're not using ARPA funds for this,
Yeah.
for example, because those will go away in 5 years, and we don't want this position to go away in 5 years. So we have to think critically about how we're going to fund this as well.
And there's
What if-
also actually a big problem with space and where someone like that would be located.
I know this probably isn't possible to figure out, but if the ARPA money pays for these solar installations that lead to energy savings, at some point, there hopefully will be enough information to determine maybe that could be enough money to fund a position long-term. An environmental focused position.
Time will tell.
It might, yeah. It,
Any other old business? Any new business? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
move to adjourn.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Rachel.